Joining the Observer on the air live couldn't be easier. First, visit bit.ly/obguest. Once you click on that, you'll wind up on this screen. Then, you'll have to choose the webcam that you want to use. You can see there's a list of them here. And once you choose the right webcam, you'll then have to choose the microphone that you want to use. It's all very simple. Then type in your name where it says your name here. And once you have finished typing your name, click the join button. Then you'll be in the queue to be on the air. It's that easy. Hi again, everybody. It's Kevin Knesset coming to you from the newsroom of The Observer and TheObserver.com on this, the 11th day of June in the year 2024. Sure hope you're enjoying your Tuesdays, no matter where it is you are in the country. A little haze out there, I guess you would call it. I don't know. It's been a bizarre day today, but no matter where it is you are, I hope you're enjoying your day. And as we begin this broadcast, we welcome in Carmen de Jesus, who is with us today. Hope you are doing well, Carmen, my friend. Always good to see you. And to everybody who is joining us, we thank you as well for taking the time to be with us as you are each and every week, which is, of course, why we're here, because I will go over this week's news, but we have a few things to go over first. Now, today is a day in the history of this newspaper that is one that I guess, I don't want to say it's not one of the better days, let's just put it that way, because it was 22 years ago today that Lisa's stepfather, Anthony Tortoreti, died. He was 81 years old. Tony owned this newspaper, I believe, from 1972 until 2002. So that's 30 years that he put his heart and soul into the operation here at the Observer. And, you know, Lisa told me that the day he died, just the day before, she had seen him. And he said, "I love you, babe. I'll see you soon." And then she never saw him again because that night he died in his sleep. And, of course, he was in New York at the time, and she and Bobby and Tina had to drive up there after Mother Mary realized that he was gone. And I guess to this day, you know, you think about moments like that, and you just... You don't want it to be real. You don't want it to be a reality of any kind, but unfortunately it was. And when I think about this, I think I met Tony maybe twice in my lifetime in the late 90s when I would pop in and I was running for office, and we were doing an ad of some kind or whatever it was. But those times, he was always such a gentleman. And I wish I'd known him better. And Lisa always tells me that I would have loved him. I would have loved him, and I'm sure I would have. And a lot of what we see in her, and all of you know, comes from him. And the things that she does around here are all in his honor and because of things he taught her. And when I tell you he taught her every aspect of the business, he really and truly did. He taught her everything from sweeping the floors at night to putting ads together and cutting them and pasting them literally. Cut and paste comes from a real thing where ads were made that way. And she showed him all the ropes when she was younger, and then she took over after he died in 2002. And his smile is what is always remembered. You see that smile right there. You see that look in his eyes. This is a man who just, look at how happy he looked. How you just can't fake that either. When people are putting on a smile and it's a fake smile, that is legitimate happiness that you're seeing right there in that picture. And that's who he was, and that's how he lived his life. And I only, on a personal level, wish I knew him more, because I know I would have loved him the way Lisa did, and Tina, Bobby, and Mother Mary too. And it's hard to believe it's been 22 years since that day. I remember it. I do. I do remember it. I was working at St. Cecilia's at the time. And I remember getting the paper that week and seeing that and being so surprised by it. You just, one week he's there and he's working, and the next week he's gone. But his legacy lives on in this newspaper. His name, his last name, is still in this newspaper every week through Mother Mary. And it's a tough week for Lisa, too, because her birthday is the 17th of June, and the 11th is the day that he died. It's also the same day that our Jim Haig died last year, 1 year ago today. So this is not an easy week. It never has been, at least for the last 22 years, and it probably never will be again. And, Lisa was reminding me that there was a clan bake scheduled in her honor for her 40th birthday that year, because in 2002 she turned 40. And it never happened. It never happened. And those are things that will always stick in your mind. I sometimes wonder how you get past something like that, if you ever do. But she did, and without a moment's notice, after Tony died in 2002, she had no other choice but to step up and come here. She took over the operation, an operation that was fledgling at the time, and she turned it around almost overnight. But was it easy? No. But she did. And she did it in honor of her dad. And all these years later, what you see today, which is still in existence 137 years after the paper began, a lot of it goes back to him and what he did here and the way he did things. And we still see it every day here. And so 22 years later, he's gone. He's certainly not forgotten. And he has an influence on this place that most of you may not see on a weekly basis or a daily basis, but that we see here each and every day. His legacy lives on through Lisa. And it's a beautiful legacy. He was a good man. I don't need to have met him then to know that much. So 22 years later, we remember Anthony Tortoreti, who left us at the age of 81 on this day back in 2002. And we are forever grateful for the things that he did for Lisa and for Tina that have stuck with us all these years and many, many years later. He was a good man, and he is missed. May he rest in peace still. That is Tony Tortoreti. This is just a housekeeping item. As most of you know by now, Tony Mondero, speaking of Tony's, it's Tony Day almost, of the Harrison Weather Center, is hosting a fundraiser. He doesn't do this too often, doesn't ask people often for donations, but if you get a chance, just freeze frame this for a second, and you can write down this web address, and you can donate there if you prefer. You can also, I'm sure, do checks as well. Tony has been doing this for 40-plus years with the Harrison Weather Center, and he very, very rarely asks for any kind of donation, but he is now. So if you are so inclined, please consider donating to the Harrison Weather Center. It is not a cheap operation to put together, let's just put it that way, and Tony puts his heart and soul into this every single day of the week. I don't think he takes days off. When he goes on vacation, he's still doing it. So please consider donating to our dear friend Tony Mondero, my dear friend Tony Mondero, the Harrison Weather Center. Now, here's this week's newspaper. Of course, Portugal Day just passed us, and, Carney has always been in the forefront of celebrating Portuguese heritage, but there was a flag raising last week, and for the first time since 1999, the town of Carney held a Portuguese Day parade, which is just remarkable when you think about it, that there was not a Portugal parade in 25 years in this town. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but Mayor Carol Jean Doyle and some members of the town council decided they wanted to resurrect it. Some of the members of the council were present for the parade. Not everybody was there for the parade, but some members of the council were present. And it was a great celebration of Portuguese heritage and Portuguese culture. You see the kids on the front page. There were dances and things of that nature. And the Portuguese ambassador to the United States of America was also present for the flag raising at Town Hall Park. So it was a great day. And if you didn't get to go, we had some photos in the back of the paper as well, and we'll put some online as well. But it was a nice celebration of all things Portugal. And, of course, when you think about it, there's really no better place to celebrate Portugal than right here in the town of Kearney. Now, speaking of that, you stay in Kearney. The Kearney Eats program is up and running. It runs until the 23rd of June. This is an opportunity for folks to try out some new restaurants and to get some really good deals. You know, sometimes people don't realize just how many restaurants there are in this town, but there are so many, and a lot of new ones too. And each and every one of them have just tremendous menus, and some of them are experiences, truthfully. So this is a good week. These couple of weeks are good times for residents locally. Don't have to be from Kearney to take advantage of these specials to celebrate Kearney Eats program. If you visit www.kearneyeats.com too, there is a complete listing, and we have it in this week's paper as well. But you'll also be able to figure out what some of the specials are. Some of the specials are announced during the course of the week, and you'll be able to see that. And sometimes things are updating and upgrading on the menus and things of that nature. So be sure to check out kearneyeats.com this week, and, of course, to frequent some of those restaurants that are doing some great stuff in town. Now, this is a little bit old, and we talked about it last week. I did a rundown of the election, but it was for the print edition. Fred Estes, of course, won the Democratic primary for the 3rd Ward seat in the town of Kearney, and he will face off against George Santos. George Dos Santos is his actual name, but he uses Santos on the ballot, and he is running for the 3rd Ward council seat that Councilwoman Carol Jean Doyle vacated when she became mayor. Fred won by a 55 to 45% margin. I don't remember the exact vote count, but you can read it in this paper. And he will, of course, the two of them face off in November, and then whoever wins will take the seat immediately in November as soon as the election is certified, because this is technically a special election. It's the only race in Kearney this year. And it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a high turnout for this election. In most years, the elections in the town of Kearney are, would be 2025 and 2026, and not a presidential election. But in 2024, there's a presidential election, so the turnout will be exceptionally high, especially when you consider how crappy the turnout was in the 3rd Ward for the primaries. So this is anybody's race. It's for anybody to win. George is a great guy. Fred is a great guy. And I think they're both going to have their hands full with each other in this race. But we will, of course, visit that when we get closer to the election, and we'll see what happens there as well. Parts of Pennsylvania and Central Avenue in South Kearney will be closed for the next year. So if you ever have to go down to South Kearney for any reason whatsoever, may I suggest you read this so that you know where the detours are. It's very, very important that you do that. Now, this was something, I don't even know where to begin with this. A couple of weeks ago this happened, and this was somewhere in the Manor section. And it was Detective Sergeant Mike Andrews patrolling the manor, and he saw this car that he believed was acting in an erratic manner. So he followed the car onto a dead end, and when he followed the car into the dead end, he got out and he tried to get them out of the car. There were, I believe, 3 men in the car, and rather than surrender, and considering this, the police cruiser, which I believe is a Dodge Durango, was blocking their escape route on the dead end when they turned the vehicle around. And instead of stopping, they just rammed the police car and took off. Now, you may be asking, why didn't the police officer, Sergeant Andrews, go after him? And the answer is he couldn't, because there are certain conditions that have to be met in order for police chases to be authorized. And the lieutenant, I believe, who was on duty at the time, made it clear that this was not a chaseable situation. Now, later on, they found out that the vehicle was stolen, and if they had known that at the time, they might have been able to go after this guy, but at the time they didn't know that, so they could not authorize the chase. So it was good police work by Mike Andrews, and unfortunately, in this state, I don't know how this has happened, but the Attorney General, Matt Platkin, in the state of New Jersey, has absolutely taken handcuffs and put them on police officers in their ability to do their jobs. You can't even describe how often there are instances where, because of regulations that this guy has proffered, that they cannot do what they need to do and why they were hired and the reasons why they were hired. I have never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I really haven't. And unfortunately, what's going to happen is it's going to take a massive mistake somewhere where somebody is wrongfully killed, or an intruder gets killed, or an intruder kills somebody, until this guy loosens the handcuffs on the cops. It is just horrible what's happening. When you just think about this for a minute, this guy and two others were in this vehicle on a dead-end street in the Manor. It was overnight. And he rammed the police car, sped off, and there was absolutely nothing the police officer could do. And don't tell me that these criminals don't know that. They do. They know that they don't need to get out. Why would you surrender if you could just hit the police car and get out and go? And that all goes back to the directives that have been issued by the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey. This has to be addressed. It really has to. And I'm afraid it may not be until next year, when there's an election for governor, and it's going to take a new governor in order for this to really get fixed. It really is. And I was speaking with a Kearney police officer the other day, and he gave me some instances where if a school shooter were trying to get away from police, that he couldn't be chased. What world does that make sense in? Does anybody know? Does anybody have any idea in what world that makes sense? That if a school shooter took off in certain directions, the police couldn't chase after this guy. But that's the reality of it, and that's not the case in every state, folks. It is not that way in every state, but it is indeed here in New Jersey. So this is what police officers are up against, and sometimes you have to wonder. It makes you wonder why they go through all this training, why they spend all this time for continuing education, only to be told in certain instances, don't do your job. Where does that make sense? Where does that make sense? And it's a shame, because I know it frustrates a lot of police officers, if not all of them. It's got to be intensely frustrating when you know that in some instances maybe you could have done something, but nope. Matt Platkin says, no, you can't do it. But that's where we are, folks. So a lot of times when you see some of these crazy police stories where you would say, well, why didn't they chase after him? You got to realize this is not the decision that is made lightly. It's not a decision that's made necessarily by the officers. It's one that is made from the very tippy top. And when that happens, that means they cannot do what they have been hired to do, these police officers, and it makes their job impossible sometimes. And until things change, we're just going to keep seeing more and more and more of this. It's going to be the same old. And I'm sure we'll see another one just like it. There's another one in this edition of the paper, too. There's another case just like it where, there's just nothing they could do. So keep your eyes open for it. But I want this to be very, very clear to everybody who's watching this now, whether you're watching it live or on a podcast. The police can only do so much. They are not to blame here. They are not to blame here. And it's just the unfortunate way that things are right now. And they go out each and every day, put their lives on the line, and then sometimes they just have to back off. Where does that make sense? To me, it just simply doesn't. A few other things real quick. Harrison middle schoolers took part in Law Day, and several of them won competitions, including one in the rap category. I'm not sure where rap and Law Day come together, but these kids are very, very talented in Washington Middle School. So we have a piece on that as well. Oh, this was the other story. 18 motor vehicle and criminal summonses for this one guy, and he was released that day. This was the one I forgot about. Okay, 18. Reckless driving, careless driving, possession of drugs, you name it, possession of paraphernalia, on and on and on. And after all was said and done, a couple hours later, he's released. So it goes. This, of course, is the bail reform issue that we've talked about 100,000 times. So please read this story on page 8. If this doesn't make you frustrated, nothing will. And, of course, our Jason Bernstein has sports, a whole bunch of stories here, and including Harrison flag football team winning a championship. Their flag football is getting really big in the state of New Jersey. And then we have 2 pages of classifieds as we do each and every week. So if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a new place to live, anything of that nature, you need your house cleaned. We have some housekeepers who have classified ads in there. Please find them in this week's edition of The Observer in the classified section on pages number 16 and 17. And believe it or not, that's it for this week's edition of The Observer. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the chat room. Carol Manley is here with us. Carol, good to see you. Carmen de Jesus is with us. Billy Scarterfield watching from out in Arizona. Billy, I'm sorry I didn't realize you were here earlier. And, of course, Barbara Condon is also here with us from upstate New York. It's good to see all of you. And our Lisa has been watching from the other room. We remember, again, our stepfather, Tony Tortoreti, who left us 22 years ago today. And I know she misses him, and I'm sure I would. I do too, even though I never met him. I wish I had that chance. So, from the newsroom of The Observer and TheObserver.com, that'll do it for now, and we will see you back here again 1 week from today, unless, of course, something breaks during the course of the week, at which point we will certainly join you if that does, in fact, happen. And I'm moving for Saturday, so I'll be finally back in the town of Kearney. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. We will see you back here again next week. Take care.